Living off the land now known as Littleton, Massachusetts, there once lived an Indian tribe called the Neshobas. Under the leadership of Chief Wabun and Sachem Tehadawon, the Neshoba Indians remained peaceful and loving in a time of great conflict. But as the white man made his approach, the Neshoba tribe grew wary, and it was not until they listened to the teachings of Reverend John Eliot that the Neshoba Indians accepted and followed the white man's ways. For Reverend Eliot had taken the time to learn the Neshoba language so that he could translate the Bible into their tongue, and it was after listening to the Reverend preach that Chief Wabun decided that he would become the first Neshoba Indian to convert to Christianity. And as the rest of the tribe quickly followed, many of them changed their names to reflect their new religion. As for Reverend Eliot, he had his own motives for befriending the Indians. His mission was to create Indian towns where Christian worship was established under an Indian ruler and teacher. Reverend Eliot would convince a group of Indians to accept the white man's ways, and then he would petition the General Court of Massachusetts to set aside a place for them. In 1654, Neshoba was established as the 6th praying Indian town. The Neshobas had only a few happy years to enjoy their new way of life, because in 1675, the French and Indian War broke out around them.
My mother's name was Whitcomb, so I'll talk about the Whitcomb family, because the Whitcombs were one of the original settlers here in the town. The father went to Lancaster. He settled there for a few years, and when he was out in the fields, the Indians raided the house, killed his wife, one of his sons, and the people that he was staying with.
With these attacks breaking out around them, the Neshoba tribe found themselves in a terrible predicament. The English did not trust them because they were Indians, and the other tribes disliked them because they lived like the white man.
One of the legends in town, one of the neat stories, is Mary Shepherd, who lived down on Great Road, kind of near Powers. There's a marker for her at the Mary Shepherd farm. She and her brothers were kidnapped one night. The brothers were killed, and Mary Shepherd was taken, we think, to Lawrence, and escaped and came on horseback. As we say, we don't know how much truth and how much legend there is, but she came back to warn everyone of what was happening.
Several of the neighboring whites were so fearful of the Neshoba Indians that the 50 or 60 Indians were placed into isolation on Deer Island in Boston Harbor. But after spending many months in extreme weather conditions, many of the Neshoba Indians died from hardship and exposure. Very few returned to their homeland.
In 1714, after the war, everything was kind of divided up. The Neshoba plantation, which covered Concord and a big portion of the area, was divided, and finally Littleton was founded in 1714, was when all the officers were elected, and we officially became a town. It was named Littleton in 1715. And we got the name from an English gentleman, George Littleton. We're not quite sure where the connection is, and it was Lyttleton, and it's since been changed to the spelling we know now.
It was not until 1714 that the townspeople paid tribute to the Neshoba Indians.
And Newtown, where we have Newtown Road now, was set aside for Indian land. It was the new town for the Indians. And Sarah Doublet, who was our last Indian that lived in town, lived up there and gave their land to the town. And now the Conservation Commission has set up land put aside, the Sarah Doublet Forest.
As the residents of Littleton pulled together to create a town, they decided to build a meeting house. They voted on many issues concerning the town, such as hiring the town's first minister, Benjamin Shattuck, and the decision to create the town's first cemetery. It was 1721 when the town laid out plans for a cemetery, but prior to this decision, families would have their own private burying place located on their property. Another concern that residents had to deal with was the schooling of their children. It was required by law to teach their children reading and writing. Several families in town took it upon themselves to set up classrooms in their homes or to build small schoolhouses on their property at their own expense. While the children were in school learning, the adults were tending to the fertile meadows, ponds, and streams. Littleton was an excellent area for farming. The land provided the farmers with food such as rye, Indian corn, turnips, beans, and apples. Even the woodlands provided them with food, such as game birds and other small animals. But it also housed many troublesome animals.
My great-great-grandfather was Vandolo Whitcomb. However, his grandfather was a resident on Whitcomb Avenue, and there were some bears that were, at least one bear, that was killing the cattle of the farmers up on that area. So he went out one night and stayed all night and killed the bear, shot the bear. Now, he was born in 1717, died in 1760. And they have a monument in the field up there saying Jonathan Whitcomb killed a bear in this particular year.
But just as the town recovered from the French and Indian Wars, they found themselves on the brink of yet another war. It was 1765, and many of the colonists were objecting to the British rule. So together, the colonists joined forces and created the Sons of Liberty. The majority of colonists in Littleton felt that they needed to use armed resistance against the British, but several colonists disagreed. As the war escalated, most of the men in Littleton prepared themselves for battle.
They, practiced with their guns and marching, and afterwards they went down to the tavern, Fox Tavern, which is on Foster Street now, and talked about the war and what was coming up. And then on April 19th, man from Acton, Mr. Weatherby, came, and the British are coming, and everyone, we had 46 soldiers in one company, 45 in another, and they all gathered quickly at a minute's notice. That's how the Minuteman name came about, and went off to Concord. In all, we had 150 men from Littleton in the Revolutionary War, which represented 75% of the able-bodied men at that time. So the whole town pretty much went to war. And Luther Blanchard, who was, he was a Littleton man, he lived up near the Acton line. He actually went into the Acton group under Captain Isaac Davis. And his claim to fame is he's the first man wounded at the North Bridge in Concord. The first shot that was brung out by the British, he caught, and he went to a farmhouse and was bandaged up and went back to war and actually went to fight at Bunker Hill. So he's kind of our claim to fame in the Revolutionary War days.
After the Revolutionary War, the impoverished town of Littleton fell upon hard times. In hopes of recovering, Littleton residents pulled together and made many changes. But it was not until the 1800s that the biggest change of all occurred. The town's religion had diversified.
There was the Congregational, the Baptist, and the Unitarian. Actually, the first church in town was located at Littleton Common. After that church burned, they rebuilt a church over where the present Unitarian church is. That church burnt in, I think it was 1840, and they built a new one, which is the present one that stands there today. And that was the original town church. The Congregational and the Baptist church came just before the turn of the century, 1900. And the Catholic Church came. That little church across the street was built in the mid-20s.
Catholics used this church until St. Anne's was built in 1960. As the 1800s continued, the introduction of the train provided residents with a means of travel other than horse and buggy. Due to the numerous train wrecks, patrons were required to sign a pledge that they would use their tickets for no other purpose than attending church. The start of the 20th century brought upon changes such as the Littleton Telephone Association, which was founded in 1904, and the housing developments around Long Lake.
When Long Lake was developed, a lot of new families came to Littleton, and it gave an added mix to the town of Littleton. And a lot of people met their wives down there. The local farmers down there were taken by these girls who came up from Boston, Somerville, Medford, Harlington. And so there were a lot of new blood brought into the strain of the old Yankees that were living here in Littleton.
As the population around Long Lake increased, the area started to become more developed.
When I first grew up, everybody was very friendly down there. And of course, they tried to sell lots down there and then get more people to come into the place to buy land, because there were over 5,000 lots that had to be sold down there. And the developer, Warren Smadback, and his brother Arthur, built a clubhouse down there, which opened up in 1925. And this was deeded over to the association, which ran dances there every Saturday night, and later on running every Wednesday and Saturday night. And this is how they made money to repair the roads down there. And this is how the local people met a lot of the city people who had come up there to rent cottages and stayed around there. And people from Acton and Maynard all came to these dances, which were very popular at the time. There were always boats there to rent to go out fishing. And then we had a motorboat there that would take people around the lake and back, 10 cents a ride. It was a lot of fun in those days.
Although the population in Littleton increased, the town remained a close-knit community.
Well, we didn't know of any drugs when I was going to school. There was beer. We had some good times. Actually, there were 15 people in my graduating class at Littleton High School. Out of the 15, 5 of us were related, so the teachers never bothered to say anything about any one student because they didn't know who their cousin was. The population now is back up, and they're going to have to build a new high school. Right now, the former middle school is now the elementary school, and the so-called high school is now the senior high school. But it's bursting at the seams, and we're planning to build a new senior high school within the next couple of years. So the population of the schools it's growing fast.
Well, I think there's been so many major changes that have occurred. Like, just take the fire department, just the one. When there was a drowning at Long Lake, they came down with just a pole with a hook on it. They didn't have a boat to go out. We used to have to give them our boats to go out to fish for a body. Thank God there were only 1 or 2 drownings down there, but when they did, they didn't have anything. They had no experience. Today we got a whole modern thing. We got a trained department. At that time we had 1 acting police chief around 1925. Now we have a whole police force. Everything has improved. Everything has grown.
As we head into the new millennium, we can only wonder what other changes will happen to the town of Littleton.